How's it going, everybody? I'm Kyle from Fantasy Fort Studios.
And I am also Dane from Fantasy Fort Studios, and welcome to the Everlast TCG Frost Set Spotlight for the Heroes of the West.
Absolutely. Today we will be going over the Frost element for that specific expansion, detailing the good creatures that exist in kind of this two set expansions that came out at the same time. In order to have a little bit of some context and reference about kind of what we're looking at, is this is a game that's based off of a tabletop role-playing game, and this set, Heroes of the West, focuses on the Kingdom of Helix, which is this kind of northern part of this giant peninsula called the Kingdom of Helix. And the cards that are in the Frost element set are specifically the capital of the Helix Royal line, the city Helix. So that's going to be located right here. And so it's kind of the element that like the main focus of the set is centered around. Pretty much the capital of this area. And so without further ado, we can go ahead and jump into kind of talking about some of the cards. If you have not seen our other videos, whether it's the other element sets that we've already covered thus far, we've already done at point of recording the flame element sets for both Raising of Helix and Heroes of the West, and we'll be continuing on with all 6 elements and including more for like, item cards and whatnot. But right now we are now on Frost, and a little bit of how Frost kind of works, especially mono Frost decks, is they're going to be bigger, thicker, higher HP creatures, not necessarily as lethal with their one-hit KOs that the flame elements or like the dark element has, but they do have a much higher base starting HP with that. And so they have a lot of kind of secondary effects to their attacks, which either stall or pretty much stalling, and then kind of a little bit of manipulation that goes along with that against your opponent. It's a pretty good kind of slow deck, but can get quite strong as you start to promote creatures as that goes. As you can see in the bottom here, we have weaknesses and resistance. So frost type creatures have a fire type, a flame type weakness at ×2, and they have resistance to electric type creatures at -20. So Dane, why don't you go ahead and introduce our very first card?
Yeah, and as Kyle had mentioned, we do have a bunch of videos up right now on our YouTube channel, including how to read card anatomy. So if you're here for the first time and you've never heard of the Everlast TCG, or you haven't ever played it before, feel free. We have card anatomy, how to read a card, and what we're going to be really diving into abilities and the attack actions and what they do. So if you don't want to be confused, feel free to go to those other videos on our YouTube channel, and or you can stick around and sit it out with us and then go back later, and it'll make a lot more sense when you do. But we're going to be looking, as Kyle had mentioned, this game is based off of the world of Everlast, which is based off of the tabletop RPG. Being a Heroes of the West, being a good set as the flame element was, there is a line of adventurer classes as well. So it starts off as a primary, and then it'll promote into four different
Variations.
classes as well, variations. So it's the only kind of card that you're able to promote into different types of cards, which is cool. So the first one we have is the Adventurer Knight, and as you can see, kind of like how the Oblate class was with the Flame set, it's a defender type. Initially, when it comes out, it's the defender type. So it's a little bit thicker, but it'll also promote into 2 attacker types, or a defender type, or a support type. So depending on what you want in the deck, but the primary version is a defender type. So when you play this card from your hand onto the battlefield, let's take a look at the drop ability. So it's drop ability Sentinel. So rotate one of your active creatures in the activated position into the unactivated position. So this is very, very key early game, especially because when you play your cards initially onto the battlefield, they start in the activated position, meaning they can't move and they can't do any attack actions. So this is great because you play this Adventure Knight onto the battlefield, and you're able to choose one of your cards and unactivate it, meaning it can move around during your turn as well as complete actions. So it's very strong.
It is quite
It's a good
strong.
primary card.
And that brings us down to its attack action. So it has a red activate ability, which is symbolic of attack action. For 2 frost mana, you have Shield Slam for 30 damage against 1 primary target creature. And its additional effect is flip a coin. On the result of heads, rotate the target creature into the activated position. So basically, this card helps you to unactivate your creatures once it's played onto the field. You can use it to kind of stall your opponent, especially if you're going first in the attack phase and you're able to land the heads on a coin flip. You can stop basically a threat, a much bigger threat, from attacking whatever's directly in front of them or whatever is the target of their attack actions as it gets rotated into the activated position. So quite trolly, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Which brings us into the very first promotion of this creature, which is the attacker type, the Adventurer Dawn Rider. As mentioned before, this one goes into 2 attacker types, 1 defender type, 1 support creature. This one has kind of more of a focus on movement, as we see in its trait. So it has the humanoid, human, adventurer, knight keywords, 90 hit points, and it promotes obviously from the knight, and it has charge. So this creature can move 1 additional space. This is actually the similar trait that you saw on the EX creature from last set, Lord Richard. Viscount of Calum, he has charge as well, which basically allows this creature, instead of being able to move 2 spaces on their turn in the movement phase, it can move up to 3 spaces on your battlefield. And for those who are unfamiliar with what the battlefield looks like, this is kind of what a playmat looks like for your opponents and yourself, where you can move 1 space per turn for defender and support types, for attackers 2 spaces per turn, or in this case for the Dawn Rider 3.
Mm-hmm. And being the attacker class, we can take a look at its activate, its attack activate. So it does take 3 frost energy, but it does a decent amount of damage. So again, the primary damage right here is 60 damage, and then it will also hit the creature in front and behind for 40. So pretty strong. Definitely very, very strong. So Shred is the name of that. So if you're looking to deal high damage with a frost deck, Dawn Rider might be your go-to for a
And
promotion from the Night Adventure Knight.
something very specific to look at here is, as you can see, I have it pulled up where it's zoomed in a little bit. You have the primary, which is in the middle. And so normally, if you're reading cards, I think this is the first card that we've seen between all of the elements thus far of how to read this. If it's a lighter shade of red, that's a secondary target. If it's a darker shade, it's a primary target. Normally, what a creature will do is it'll attack in the combat lane on the battlefield. It'll attack the first creature. However, you see that it skips over the first creature, meaning the second creature is what the target is. Meaning, if there is 1 creature in a combat lane and it is in the back row, you can actually skip over that target and attack life points with it while doing 40 damage to the target in front. However, if there's still only 1 target creature in that combat row, and there is no other creatures front or back, it's always going to target for the primary 60 damage. Hopefully that makes sense, but you can use this in kind of a minor case scenario where it's either there's multiple creatures in a row, it'll be the second one back, or if there are 1 creature in the back, you can actually target your opponent's life points and also deal damage to the target creature. So this is actually you can use this card very strategically to kind of get some cheap shots and poke your opponent's life points little by little.
And as always, we will make sure to put in the FAQ some strategy and clarifications with cards as well. So don't worry about that. We'll have this card in there. Cool.
Awesome. Which brings us to our next card, which is the Adventure Tactician.
Yeah, so the Adventure Tactician is our other, this is the other attacker promotion. And so we can take a look at the differences. So it's the same amount of HP, it's the same keywords. The only difference is, as opposed to a trait, it has a drop, which is nice. So the drop is Mana Pact Weapon Frost. So again, in the world of Everlast, mana is what gives the element to each individual creature. So again, The tactician uses mana to attack, which is kind of cool. So the drop ability, so choose one of your opponent's active creatures and it gains the frozen status ailment until the end of the combat round, which as a drop, that's very, very strong. So Kyle, do you want to explain what frozen does?
So one of the status ailments, and you can find this on our website. We have a basically a printable rule sheet on the very last page that includes all of the status ailments. However, frozen specifically, it's basically stops. It activates your opponent creature, and they can't do anything basically until the end of the turn. And think of it as kind of like a paralyze. But it can't move, it can't do anything. It's pretty much like preemptively activated, but yeah, he basically can't do anything with it until the end of the combat round. So it's always until for Frost or for Frozen until the end of the current combat round that you are playing. And so it pretty much stops anything dead in its tracks until the bottom of the combat round. And the nice thing is you can choose any target for this on your opponent's battlefield. So for at least one time per combat round, you can kind of stop a creature in its tracks by just freezing it.
Yeah, and the nice kind of thing too is like there's lots of cards that like activate your opponent. However, this card isn't activation. It's a status ailment frozen. So any card that would be able to unactivate a specific creature doesn't work on a creature that is frozen. So frozen's pretty strong.
For example, the Sentinel ability. Let's just say you are playing another Frost deck that has like the ability to like freeze a creature. If a creature gets frozen and you play this Adventurer Knight with the Sentinel drop ability, you can't target a frozen creature because it's not just activated; it has the frozen status ailment. So, again, some things to kind of think about as well.
Mhm.
But that brings us to our activate ability, which is an attack action for 1 frost mana, Manic Slash for 50. Additional effect, this attack action ignores damage resistance. And so one thing that's really nice about this is having a 1 mana attack, especially for like 50 damage. That's nothing to scoff at. It might not hit as hard as maybe some other promoted attacker type creatures, but this is a good creature to be able to move around and, again, poke at life points openings and just do kind of some small chip damage while also ignoring damage resistance. So it's great against those flame cards that are maybe a little bit pesky for your frost cards to take care of.
Mhm. Yep, perfect.
Which brings us to our next card, which is the Adventurer Paladin. So this is going to be the defender type creature. As you can see, it has a nice hefty 100 hit points with the humanoid, human, adventurer, knight keywords, defender type creature. It has the trait Shield Ally. So when this creature is in the guard position, its guard reach spans to empty spaces on both sides of the card instead of just one side. So for example, when you rotate a creature into the guard position, it is moved sideways and you can basically cover 2 spaces, 2 combat lanes with it. In this case, you can keep it in the middle and it covers both lanes on either side, meaning it can take three up to 3 spaces. And so it has the ability to really plug up some holes on your battlefield. So it's pretty nice in that way in how to be able to use it. Yeah,
Hmm.
kind of
Yeah,
self-explanatory.
it's pretty good. Again, this deck really focuses on high HP and defense, so it's a great ability, or it's a great trait to be able to use. So now let's take a look at the activate. So for 2 frost mana, you can use Foe Strike for 50. The additional effect is if the target enemy has the Fell, Undead, or the Voiden keywords, inflict double damage before applying weakness and resistance, which is really great because again, in the Raising of Helix, I know Fell, for example, there's lots of Fell creatures, and there in future sets there's going to be lots of undead and void creatures. So, yeah, the Knight class is going to be, I think, pretty strong for the foreseeable future for dealing with some of those types of creatures. So, I mean, for 2 mana, dealing 100 damage is pretty strong.
And then if
It's
they are
pretty
weak on
strong.
top of it, that's 200 damage. And
Yeah.
so like this card for 2 frost mana can pretty much cap out at 200 damage if it's against something that's weak to of
Mhm.
the frost element, which is nice. So
Pretty good. Yeah. Yep.
and then our last creature, which is that promotes from the base adventure class, is the adventurer, the standard bearer.
Yeah, so as we can see, it's the support class of the Knight class. And so the trait itself, so Knight Standard. So all of your active creatures with the human keyword that are within 1 space of this creature receive 20 plus 20 damage to their attack actions against all targets. So not only is it great for generating mana, but if your standard bearer is close to any of your creatures that deal damage, it buffs them, which is really, really strong. So keep your standard bearers close to your attackers for
Mhm.
sure.
They're meant to be kind of like up in the main lines of like your attack as opposed to just sitting them at the back. They should be moving around where you need them to be moving around, with kind of just that passive trade. They have 80 HP, which is pretty high for a promoted support type creature. And they also have the activate ability for 1 mana. If you wish to forego activating them to generate mana, for 1 frost mana battlefield rally, which is randomly discard 1 card from your opponent's hand and draw 1 card from the top of your deck. If the card that your opponent discarded was a creature, draw 4 cards instead. And so hand manipulation against your opponent. And so yeah, it's pretty nice. Like if you're lucky, and most Everlast TCG decks have around kind of a 50-ish% ratio of creatures to like arts and then like item cards in the decks. And so the chances are pretty high that it's going to be good. And so basically for 1 mana, you're not only hurting your opponent's hand, but you're also potentially drawing up to 4 cards in your own hand. It's pretty good.
Yep. So Night Class, I think it's going to be very strong for the foreseeable future. It's got a lot going for it, especially with human style decks. So pretty good. Excited.
Which brings us to kind of our first key NPC, and first of the EX lines in the Raising of Helix Frost Element sets, which is Irea, the Princess of Helix. She is a support type creature, 70 base hit points. She is a captain, meaning she takes up one of your 3 captain spaces on your battlefield. And you can only have one of her on your battlefield at a time. She has the drop ability, the Grace of Helix, which is when you play her from your hand onto the battlefield, search your deck for a primary type creature and place it onto your battlefield in the unactivated position. Which again, it's not only amazing search, but they can go into your battlefield on the unactivated position. And if the played creature has the Helix keyword, so as we're looking at keywords here, usually Helix will be at the end there. Add an additional D4 Frost mana to your mana pool. Shuffle your deck. So you just roll a D4, and whatever the result is, you add that many Frost mana. And so it's pretty strong because when you naturally just play a supporter type creature, primary supporter type creature onto your battlefield, it generates mana. And so it generates 1 mana kind of almost as if you're activating it to kind of speed things up a little bit. But this has the potential to do, I guess, the 1, but also up to 4 mana. And so it's a really strong ability to be able to kind of maybe even hold on to a little bit. So it's good in kind of any situation, whether it's early game or late game, depending on what you got on your battlefield.
Yeah. And the wonderful thing too is especially if you roll a d4 and you get the 4 on it and you get a bunch of mana added in, you can feel free to use her activate on your movement phase, which is Battlefield Tactics, which is pretty strong for a primary creature. Draw 3 cards. Again, especially if you have nothing in your hand, drawing 3 cards for free is pretty darn good for just 1 mana.
Yeah,
So
especially with
definitely
no
worth it.
setbacks as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which brings us to our first EX. So Irea,
Yeah.
Princess of Helix EX.
Mm-hmm. So as a support, pretty good. She's got 100 HP, base HP as a promoted character. But like all other EXs, if your EX is defeated, then you have to take one of your prize cards. So just be careful where you place her. I mean, she's got a lot of HP, so she'll probably be pretty good. But just be careful. Don't stick her in your front line if you can help it. But she also has a drop ability when you play her onto your primary Irea, and that is Call of the Crown. So search your deck for 3 primary type creatures with the Helix keyword and play them onto your battlefield in the unactivated position, which is very strong, especially the fact that they come out unactivated, so they're just ready to go. Which is nice, and it's any. So it's just basically if they have the Helix keyword. So there's a lot of like really good Helix captains, heroes, and then even some other like non-named characters that are very strong in Frost that you can basically put her out and then you can get her army surrounding her, which is kind of nice. So very strong.
Yep. And then she has the support action, the Gem of Helix. And so for 1 additional from her primary form, 1 additional Frost mana, she gets choose one of your opponent's active creatures and it gains the Frozen status ailment until the end of the combat round. And it also gains the draw 3 cards ability. So you not only get to draw 3 cards, but you get to freeze one of your opponent's active creatures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then the EX activate. So for 4 frost mana, it's quite a bit, but again, you can only use it once anyways. Plea of Faith. So randomly shuffle 10 cards from your discard pile into your deck. Restore 30 hit points to one of your active creatures for each creature shuffled back into your deck in this way. So it's really good. It's really strong for, again, healing up your characters. Again, Frost Element are very defensive anyways, so not only does it allow you to put cards back into your deck from your discard pile, but it can really allow you to heal up some of your creatures who are really struggling as far as HP goes. So it could turn around the game, essentially.
And especially with the way that Frost does work is it's probably the primary stall type deck, and so both players are going to be, unless something happens and then there's some quick stuff that happens to make life points go away, reaching kind of longer games towards the end of the 8 life points. And so it's a great way to kind of last minute reshuffle a bunch of cards back into your deck to keep you from decking out.
Yep. Very strong. Very, very good. And
That
awesome artwork.
and amazing artwork by our amazing artist. And yeah, this is going to be one of those cards that I think is going to be highly sought after. But that brings us to the next card, which I think might be one of the biggest Swiss Army knives that could be in any single deck, at least good aligned deck in Everlast, which is the Kamela Famous Brewer. She is a human. She's a humanoid human. Helix keywords 80 HP. She's a support type frost creature, and she has the trait Bottoms Up. At the end of each combat round, this creature gains a drink token. So basically, get whatever tokens you want to mark these drink tokens that you accumulate at the end of every combat round. And at any point during your turn in the combat round, you may spend a drink token to reflip any coin flip result. So there's a lot of cards that do deal with coin flips, and you can kind of hoard them so you can keep them, a bunch of them, until the end of the game, but they basically don't go away once you have gained a drink token, and then you can use them to reflip a result. So, for example, if it's your opponent's turn and they force you to flip a coin or something, this doesn't work. It's only on your turn that you can do it, but it's a great way to be able to, get yourself a little higher chance. I know there's some creatures in here that rely a lot on coin flips for extra damage, so it's a little bit of safety, but this is a great card. I have a hunch that's going to be put on in a lot of different elements of decks instead of just Frost.
Mm-hmm. And if you do decide to put her in Frost, she's got the activate for Rejuvenating Concoction. So choose one of your active creatures and remove one status ailment from the selected creature. So again, if she's in a Frost element deck and you have Frost mana to be able to use, especially if you're playing another Frost deck or another deck that really uses status ailments, she can come in handy. So very strong.
Which brings us to our next captain of the deck, which is, or of the element, which is Geralt, Captain of the Guard. He is a good creature, and so he's got 120 hit points. He is thick with 2 Cs, defender type. Captain, humanoid, human, helix keywords, and has the trait Captain of the Garrison, which this is another pretty strong ability as well. So at the beginning of the attack phase, before either player begins their turn, choose one of your opponent's active creatures and flip a coin. On the result of a heads, the chosen creature gains the frozen status ailment until the end of the combat round. And so it has basically a built-in, without any action required, potential just frozen mechanic that it can spam against your opponent once per turn. And then if you pair that with Kamela, you have a higher chance to be able to land that freeze. And so yeah, he's gonna be sticking around for a long time, and he's definitely gonna be a thorn in the side to your opponents as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also as far as Frost Element goes, he does a lot of damage for only 2 Frost mana. So not only is he a defender with high HP, but he can also pack a punch if you're not careful. When you're up against him, his primary attack action with Great Spear does just a base 60 damage, and then the creature behind him will also take 20 extra damage. So pair that with the Standard Bearer, and he's hitting 80-40. So yeah, it's pretty good.
Which brings us to our attacker line of basically cards that you can play 3 of on your battlefield, which is the Helix Bowman. He has 70 hit points, humanoid, human, Helix keywords. He is an attacker type, as I had mentioned, and he has the drop ability Farsight. So when you place him onto your battlefield from your hand, draw 1 card. And so it's just some good, decent draw.
Yeah. And speaking of good, decent damage, he for two frost mana, he does longbow for 40. So you could just hit someone for 40, which is great. So
And
very basic, but good. Mhm.
one good thing to note too is as an attacker type creature, 70 is a huge hit point number. And so he might not hit a ton and his attack might be a little costly for the damage, but he will stick around for a while. But he promotes actually into the Helix Marksman, who is a good creature. Again, 90 hit points, 20 more than the previous. Attacker type, humanoid, human Helix, and he has the drop ability Eagle Eye. So when you promote the Helix Bowman with this creature, search your deck for a primary type creature with the Helix keyword and place it onto your battlefield. Shuffle your deck. So it's not in the unactivated position, it's just activated position, but still pretty good.
Yep, very strong, especially just for normal drop ability. But his activate for 3 frost mana. So crossbow, which is 70 plus, which is just 70 alone would be good enough. But its additional effect is if the target is in the guard position, deal an additional 20 damage to it. So it's really, really good against defender type creatures, especially. So
Definitely your guard
yeah,
breaker.
pretty strong. Yep.
Which brings us into our support line of the basically 3 creatures that you can have up to on your battlefield at a time. You have the Helix Priest. So he has 70 hit points. Again, really thick for a supporter type creature. He's got the humanoid, human, and Helix keywords, and he has the Blessed drop ability. So this is actually pretty strong, and it's kind of a common ability that you will find with supporters and other creatures in this set, future sets as well. But essentially, all it allows you to do is when you play it from your hand onto your battlefield, you normally generate 1 frost mana because he's a frost element creature. However, he allows you to do 2 from his drop ability. He doesn't have anything else on him that makes him all that special, but his initial placement gives you more mana than normal. And then you basically just use him every turn to generate mana. That's pretty much what he's good for.
It's pretty good. Hey, simple.
Simple. But he also
Very simple.
promotes, and so that's kind of where he's also more useful. So Dane, if you want to introduce this creature.
Yeah, so like the Helix War Priest, so he's got the same exact ability, Bless, and so when you promote your Helix Priest into a Helix War Priest, you get the same exact thing. So he instead of just generating the 1 mana that he normally would, he would add 2 mana from your to your mana pool instead of just 1. So again, you get that double. You double it up with that, which is pretty good.
Exactly. And he has also an activate ability. So another perk of promoting him. He for 2 frost mana, he has healing prayer. Heal 50 hit points to one of your active creatures. This support action cannot be used during the next combat round. So it's quick healing as well if you need it. Good for
Which
keeping
hey,
some of your
50 is
bigger
pretty good.
HP creatures alive for sure.
Mhm. 50 is a strong heal. There's not a lot of characters who just for 2 mana can heal 50 HP, so it's pretty solid. Mhm. Yeah, so now let's take a look at our first defender of the defender line. And so we're looking at the Warrior of Helix. So again, as a primary creature with 70 HP, that's pretty darn good. That's a lot of HP, and it has a drop ability, Vanguard Defense. So when you play this character from your hand onto the battlefield, your opponent discards 1 card from their hand. So again, disruption, hand manipulation. So very strong.
And that's a card of their choice. So they have to discard a card, but you don't get to choose it. It's not random. They're the ones that need to choose which card to discard. And then they have the attack action activate ability for 2 frost mana, spear, just 30 damage. It's pretty good.
Yep. Yep. Very common. Typically, you'd probably be using this to defend anyway, so you wouldn't be using its spear action, but super solid.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you have the promotion of this creature, which is the Helix Royal Guard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so more HP. So from 70 to 100, and then it has a trait actually. So the trait is cover. So while this creature is within 1 space of any or of an active creature with the captain and Helix keyword, so it has to have both. It may receive all damage and effects from your opponent's attacks. From your attack actions targeting the applicable creatures, reducing the damage received by 20. Which is great. So, for example, if you have Irea out there, if you have Big Vic, as we'll talk about later, if we have anyone,
King
you can,
Alexander,
yeah,
Prince
King Alexander.
Hector, any of
Hmm.
those creatures, Aelfric. There are a lot of creatures that you can use it. So basically, you pair them up next to him, and yeah, you pretty much just like if someone's attacking them, they receive all the damage from it and then reduce that damage by 20. It's pretty good.
Yeah. So again, as a warrior should, protecting all the people who are in charge of you.
Mhm.
So
And then they
very
also
loyal.
they're also pretty strong, kind of similar to Geralt with their Great Spear. So they have for 2 frost mana, they target 2 creatures. The primary target receives 50 damage, and the secondary target receives 20. So pretty good.
So very strong. Mhm. Super solid.
Which brings us to the last 2 cards, which is going to be our last EX line of the Frost creatures. Starting with Big Vic, as we call him, Victor the Shield of the Throne.
Mhm. So yeah, Victor the Shield of Throne. Victor's cool. Those of you who haven't, well, I guess they haven't met Victor even in the tabletop RPG up at this point. He's really cool. As a character in the actual story, he's one of my favorites, and he's awesome. He's got 110 HP as a defender class as a primary creature. Big Vic. Big Vic. But he has a trait actually. So his trait is Iraea's Shield. But before we look at that, I think this is the only card in the set that isn't a human. He's actually a Draken. He's a Frost Draken, which is kind of cool. So he has the Draken keyword. So any decks that use the Draken keyword, you can use him in, and he'll work very, very well. However, he pairs very well with, in particular, Iraea, Princess of Helix, and with his trait Iraea's Shield. This creature may make attack actions while in the guard position. Additionally, if this creature is within 1 space of the card named Iraea, Princess of Helix, this creature gains the aggressive trait. So, Kyle, do you want to explain what the aggressive trait is?
Yeah, we saw
It's a
it a
common
little.
one that people
It
have.
is a common one, and we saw it in the Flame Element set. Essentially, what it does is it allows you to attack at the end of the support or the movement phase, where all the support actions and movement does happen. Doesn't matter what order in the combat initiative you are going into the attack round, this creature can attack. And so they basically get kind of like a first strike against your opponent's creatures, which is it's pretty nice.
And let's not overlook the fact that he can be in the guard position and also attack. That's pretty rare. So
Mhm.
that's really strong. Mhm.
Exactly, exactly. And speaking of attacks, not only is he thick, but he actually has a pretty decent attack in his attack action for 3 frost mana, Flurry of Justice, which is 30 plus to 1 target creature. It has an additional effect that is add 10 damage for every 10 hit points below this creature's maximum hit point total. And so he has 110 HP. So while he's still living with 10 hit points left, he can add an additional 100 damage onto that. So he can hit for 3 frost mana, 130 damage, which is, I'm pretty sure, can one-shot the vast majority of creatures in the game at this point. Pretty
Yeah,
close.
very strong. Very, very strong. And just have to be careful. Get a bunch of priests on your bench and war priests.
Especially for a
Heal them up
non
at the end of the turn.
Yeah, and especially for a non-EX creature too, like that's pretty good. I mean, it's pretty situational. So like I would say for 3 frost mana, just 30 damage if he's at full HP. You might not want to attack with him. That's a big heavy cost for just 30 damage. But if he's hurting and he's doing his job protecting the people around and absorbing damage, like you want him to be doing that in order to attack. But that brings us into his EX, a Victor Shield of the Throne EX.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we look and he's got 160 HP. Is that the highest HP in the
Yep, that's the highest
actual?
HP in the expansion. And actually, both this expansion or the Raising of Helix. I think it ties for the highest with the Great Old One. But yeah, he is thick.
Yeah, so he's also got high ray shield as this trait. And so again, this creature may make attack actions while in the guard position. Additionally, if this creature is in 1 space of a card named Iraea, Princess of Helix, this creature gains the aggressive trait. So it's the same exact that he has, which is great because it's an amazing trait. So yeah.
Cool.
And his looks like his attack activate, it's Royal Smite, and it's just a better version of Flurry of Justice. So the base attack is 50 as opposed to 30.
Yep.
And
So
does the
now
same. So it
he
does.
can go up to 150 damage as opposed to just 130, which that will basically one shot everything. If you're good, and it stays at the 3 frost mana as well. And then he has an EX activate, which again you can only use once per game. And it is Fight to the Last for 3 frost mana. So you can use this on your move during your movement phase as a support action until the end of the combat round. Reduce all damage to your active creatures with the Helix keyword by 80. So he basically puts like a wall, that like a no damage wall, pretty much. Yeah, he keeps everybody safe, which is good. So again, you can save this to use it at an ideal situation if he's like really low at HP, and it gives you basically one turn to stall if you need to do so, or just the turn you need to take care of the last of what you need to do. Or early on, if you have a pretty good setup, but your opponent has like are targeting some key creatures in your deck, this is good to just put down to just protect your creatures from getting slain.
Yeah, very solid. He's one of my favorite cards in all of Heroes of the West. So yeah, I'm excited to use him in decks.
And that
Really
will
good.
conclude our Heroes of the West overview of the Frost Element cards. Be sure to tune in for also the raising of Helix Frost Elements and all future elements, as we are going to be going in order, continuing next week with the Earth types, the Grumala Earth types in the Heroes of the West. Until then, may Alomnia guide you.